now, all the way from Answers in Genesis, the Creation Museum in Petersburg, Kentucky, the famous, the one and only...
Welcome to Paulogia and another edition of Happening News, this time live. Yep.
Hi, and welcome to Answers News for August 28th, 2017.
August 28th, 2017, it happened. I saw Answers News live.
We always need to talk about a couple of things for a couple of minutes here as people come online. Okay, show a couple of pictures to start with. There's the Creation Museum. Isn't that a nice picture of the Creation Museum? We're here at the Creation Museum.
I was also at the Creation Museum. Here's my picture.
See the dinosaur?
And my picture of the dinosaur.
Oh, that's one of my grandchildren.
I don't have any grandchildren, but if Ken's just wasting time, let's back up a bit. We arrived at the Creation Museum in the morning so that we could take in the exhibit before the main event, Answers News, at 2 o'clock. I'll be doing a separate video, or maybe a series of videos, about the museum itself.
This place gives me the creeps.
Though it's been covered so many times, I kind of felt like I had no use for the map.
Still, something familiar about this place.
The price for my obsession.
I don't know. I feel like... what?
Like we're being watched.
So it seems my taking photos of every sign and documenting like an archaeologist on this low attendance day drew unwanted attention from the staff. But more on that later. Nothing was going to stop my mission to Legacy Hall, the 900-seat venue for the infamous Ken Ham Bill Nye debate. Unsurprisingly, before any of Ken's events, the crowd must first wait and ideally spend money in one of the museum's gift shops. The doors opened at 1:45 and Ken, Bodie, and Georgia were already seated on the stage, shuffling papers and scrambling to insert a last-minute slide into their presentation. Around 50 of us found seats in the oversized auditorium as Ken attempted to do some crowd work and warm the room.
You can follow it on your smartphone. It goes live to my Facebook. And if you're following it here, just make sure your volume's turned down.
Well, that was appropriate.
I was just waiting for the slide.
Yeah.
So it's raining out there.
It was, I like it, yeah. I went out around.
You guys were at the museum, not the Ark. I had people like, yeah, we went to the Ark and it didn't rain and they're all frustrated. And it's the one place people want to go to when it's raining. You know?
Does anyone here watch their Answers News program? Yeah. I think it was, a week ago? About taking the four of their kids through the car wash, and the little 3-year-old decides to put the window down.
That was the second time Ken acknowledged me. Sadly, I missed recording the first one when he asked if anyone was from another country and I shouted back, Canada. Ken apologized for the rapid swings in Canadian law, something I've covered in a previous episode, and he suggested that they might not let me back into Canada if I showed the border guards my Creation Museum ticket. I quickly agreed.
So what we'll do here in a moment, Angelo is one of our guest services representatives, and he lives for this moment where he is going to give you the announcement of where the exit doors are. And he practices this. He wants to get it right.
Poor Angelo. Ken's subtle, maybe joking, maybe not put-downs of everyone on his staff were flying in all directions, not just when he was on camera.
Mary will give us the countdown. It's a really hard countdown for Mary to do. You've got to count from 3 down to 1. She practices that every day.
You can clap, you can laugh. Even if it's not funny, just laugh. It'll be okay.
But of course, everyone laughs at their boss's jokes.
All right, so Angelo, you've got 2 minutes to do your... Come on, do your thing.
All right, I can do my thing in 2 minutes. Thank you so much.
Oh, Angelo. That was easily the best joke of the day, and not a single person in the room laughed or even understood it. Except me.
Mr. Ken, Dr. Georgia Purdom, and Bodie Hodge.
Wait, what is it? 1:55.
I was like a couple.
About like 2
2
minutes.
minutes.
Yeah.
He's being really interesting today. Even I was not late coming down here, right? And both of them are texting me, you need to get down here. People are rioting. Da-da-da-da-da. Like, I'm on time, people. Leave me alone. So that's how it goes here. Right? We like to kid each other a lot.
That's right.
What was that? What were you complaining about now?
See, that's the other one.
Just remember, almost late is still on time.
That's right.
I put the next slide on so you see what's coming up next, if I remember.
If he doesn't, I'm the backup plan.
And I'm the backup.
You're really going to have to read.
Let me get that slide for you.
So we're going to start in 1 minute here. Feel free to put in comments. Are you ready, Mary? You ready, Jeremy? Rosman, you ready?
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome to Answers News for August 28th, 2017. We're almost done with August, so almost time for September.
And now we're back where we started. But what you really want to know is, did I meet Ken or not? Well, you're going to have to wait. We had to sit through the show to find out, so do you.
Someone sent me a
you
photograph.
could
They
skip
saw
ahead.
a poster
Don't skip
at a
ahead.
church in Wyoming. The Bible is like GPS, a brilliant guide, all-knowing, occasionally wrong.
Well, if it's occasionally wrong, how do you know where it's wrong, and why believe any of it? I mean,
Kind of defeats the purpose.
yeah.
And so we start off with me completely agreeing with Georgia. If the Bible is occasionally wrong, why believe any of it? I completely agree. Good start.
So basically, this person's idea, they're an atheist, and they say, well, the Bible has a lot of inconsistencies and immoral tales.
Now isn't the time where I'll take a stand on biblical inconsistencies or immoral tales, even though that's the reason Bodie included this story. He wants to use it to push his Bible inconsistencies books.
And no one interpretation is correct. You can just interpret it however you want.
While it is entirely possible that there's a single correct interpretation of the Bible, and Kenham makes a living by telling Christians that Answers in Genesis is the only publisher that has such an interpretation, you cannot deny that the Bible is a very pliable book that is extraordinarily subject to interpretation. At any time, you can find earnest Bible believers with scholarly contention that the Bible says to show love to homosexuals, and others contend that the Bible says to shun or murder homosexuals. Was the universe created in 6 24-hour days or billions of years? Is slavery okay or not okay? Will Jesus return before or after the tribulation? Should the poor be cared for or ignored? Should humans care for the earth, or should we just wait for Jesus to come back to restore it? Regardless of your position, the Bible can be interpreted to support either of these positions.
And they say because the Bible, the Christianity is exclusive, it's not inclusive, because it says there's only one way of salvation.
When I was still a Christian, I found this exclusionary policy to be completely consistent with the claims being true. I mean, only the true path to salvation would be so bold as to say it was the only way. Any path claiming to be merely one of many had to be false, right? At least that made sense to me at the time. This is an objection that is unlikely to influence any believer. The exclusivity is part of the proof.
The atheists are becoming very aggressive these days.
Like showing up in your audience?
Do you realize we actually have 2 books? Demolishing Supposed Bible Contradictions, Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Book plug on the first story. Good job, Bodie. I think I remember seeing those in the gift shop right outside.
When you step back and think about it, the Bible is consistent.
Coincidentally, I bought this mug in one of the 2 massive gift shops. I shouldn't have given them more money, but it was just after I met the team and was feeling impulsive. Spoilers.
I noticed the trolls are out already.
Nothing new.
One of them
It wasn't me, but this made me nervous. The friend I dragged along with me for the day had been observing that security was starting to notice us and specifically follow us around.
I've seen this in quite a few different places. It's popped up. It was all over the news this past week. 3,700-year-old Babylonian tablet rewrites the history of math.
Well, Bodie, perhaps you should have tried to see it in a few more places, like this one.
They found this thing almost 100 years ago in southern Iraq, but nobody had deciphered it. They didn't know what it was. And it turns out this tablet, which is also called Plimpton 332, what it is a trigonometric table.
Scholars have known for over 70 years that the tablet contains a trigonometric table.
This is extremely accurate, and it was done. They argue that it was before the time of the Greeks, which was our previous earliest time of some trigonometric tables.
I'm curious as to what dating methods were used to determine this, Bodie, and how they differ from dating methods that you reject when you don't like the results.
Well, they said this is actually simpler and more accurate way of doing trigonometry. So it sounds like we may need to, they say they may need to adjust some things.
It's hard to know where to start with this part of their claims, and exasperated Scientific American reports. The tablet contains some well-known errors, so claims it is the most accurate or exact trig table ever are just not true. Trigonometric tables commonly provide values for sine, cosine, and tangent combinations. Modern versions of such tables, well, relatively modern since calculators and computers have made them virtually obsolete, rise in increments as small as a single degree and thereby include approximations of irrational numbers. Rather than angle measurements, the tablet used triangle side length values at irregular intervals such that only values that can be represented as rational numbers are included. So the numbers that are included are precise, but there are fewer included, so it's less complete.
By the way, somebody here said to pray for Texas, and we certainly do need to pray for Texas.
If you recall a few episodes back, Ken and the crew used the events in Charlottesville to awkwardly and unhelpfully deny that racial divide even exists. Like the science of melanin levels somehow erases socioeconomics and history. And worse yet, used the event to try to sell his One Race book. So I'm nervous about what he might say here.
And when you see the devastation just caused by a local flood, can you imagine what a global flood would have done?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, connection to Noah's flood is to be expected. I'll give him a pass on that one.
We've got to remember something. All of us, everyone in this room, our audience,
Why is he talking about the audience so much today? Am I just paranoid? What did I do?
everyone at the museum, everyone in the world, we're the cause of what happened in Texas.
Okay, everyone in the world. That includes you too. Whew.
That's why we collectively want to help.
Part of the problem here is that all the headlines in the first few days about the Christian response to the disaster were about church buildings that didn't open their doors to victims. Pastor Joel Osteen eventually opened up his Houston megachurch, but only after being publicly shamed into doing so. I will give Ken credit here. The day after this Answers News episode, he took to Facebook Live for 20 minutes to encourage his followers to donate to the Children's Hunger Fund. This organization has a top dollar efficiency rating from Charity Navigator, so that seems on the up and up. I'm leery about what strings might be attached given that it's a Christian group, and wish that the money was going straight to the fund rather than through Answers in Genesis first. But I give Ken and his crew credit for this. It's so much better than just preaching sin and selling books.
Yeah. You know, it's from a Christian viewpoint, those types of
things.
Well,
they'll say they care, but then why they care is actually based, they're borrowing from God's
That's
word
right.
to say
Christian
it's
of them
important to care
yeah.
for people, right?
Anytime a secular philosophy agrees with Christianity on any point, the Answers in Genesis team will assert that it is borrowing from Christianity. Are we honestly to believe that no humans cared for each other before Jesus arrived 2,000 years ago? Altruism is a survival trait in social species that developed millions of years before the first hominid, let alone the first Christian. This borrowing a worldview mantra is chanted like a soothing placation to keep from the realization that while a deity may exist, one is not required to explain anything.
Because we now do it live in the museum, and we have a studio. Let's hear the studio.
Let's hear the studio audience.
Hear the studio. Oh.
Yeah, there they are.
There we are, see?
Did you hear that single boo at the end there?
See?
That was me. I didn't really mean to boo, but I was just curious as to whether I'd be able to be heard in the broadcast recording, and in the moment I couldn't think of anything to shout. I probably should have went with amen or something.
People need to send more emojis, okay? They need to be sitting there on their smartphone sending emojis. The more emojis we get, the more it gets out.
I loved watching this little moment happen. Georgia is very much a mother figure to Ken and Bodie's juvenile antics. This little stop-it gesture was priceless.
This next one comes from New Scientist. Culture, not biology, is behind many differences between the sexes.
So there's no male or female?
Yes, that's what they're trying to say.
No, that's not what it's trying to say. The article, and the paper it's reporting on, says that differences in behavioral traits between men and women are better explained by environmental factors than biological ones.
They even say biologically they think there could be more variability than just male or female, but we've masked that because of the cultural and social influences. What they're saying is it's done it to the extent where we're not seeing the gender spectrum that could be there.
The paper isn't talking about a new spectrum of genders. It's about the genders exhibiting a potential wider spectrum of traits. Georgia is allowing the audience here to fill in their own blanks. And they were. The people around us were gasping and shaking their heads and letting out audible tisk-tisks. There's actually very little to this paper beyond weighing in on the ageless debate between nature versus nurture, heredity versus environment, with no real conclusion.
Somebody comes up with this paper saying, oh, biologically, there's really no male or female.
Well, they want scientific evidence to support what they're doing.
Just like they want scientific evidence for a gay gene and things like that.
Just like they want scientific evidence for a flood. Just like they want scientific evidence for a young Earth. Don't they know we have a book?
Hey, there's some people in the audience who sent some hellos here.
All right.
So
stop talking about the audience. It wasn't me.
The Economic Times. Dino-killing asteroid darkened Earth for 2 years.
I don't understand this. What I don't understand is, oh, thank you. I forgot to turn on the next slide. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, okay.
Georgia predicted this would happen before the show. She's a prophet. Women can be prophets. Prophetess.
They're happy to have a global catastrophe if it's not in the Bible. If it's in the Bible, you can't have it.
Yeah, you
If
don't
it's in
want
the Bible,
that
it didn't
one,
happen. But they want a global catastrophe that wiped out the dinosaurs, but everything else was okay sort of thing, or most things.
Secularists are happy when claims are supported by evidence. Being in the Bible or not is completely irrelevant.
How did
Everything else seemed to survive just fine.
Here's the article you have on your screen, Ken. More than 3/4 of the species on Earth disappeared. Does that sound like everything else was okay?
They said it was dark for 2 years. What happened to all the plants?
60% of plant species went extinct as well.
We get criticized for that because, according to the Bible, God created the plants on day 3, didn't create the sun, moon, and stars until the 4th day. And they criticize us, say, well, how can these plants survive, for a whole half a day?
That's a pretty valid criticism of the AiG interpretation of Genesis 1.
So they kind of say if the animals were able to dig underground or be in the water, they were okay.
That's more because of the ability to escape the initial blast of heat, similar to the initial blast of an atomic bomb. It's estimated that it would have been safe for such creatures to return to the surface after a few days.
Still thinking, what did they eat?
Species with a diet of insects or water-based organisms fared best.
And they're saying that this would have triggered massive climate change. And they're worried about today.
Yeah, tenths of a degree.
We should be worried. 3/4 of the species on Earth died in that last massive climate change. It wasn't the biggest or the smartest who lived. What makes humans think that we'd be one of the species that will survive the next extinction event? Regardless of severity, why would we want to hasten it?
Someone said howdy. I wonder what state they're from when they say howdy.
Well, you can say howdy here in Kentucky. I mean, we're Southerners.
I will say one thing for the Creation Museum staff. They were friendly, but not too friendly. Folksy, but not too folksy. Each with that Kentucky drawl you'd expect. However, we noticed that none of the voiceovers in the exhibits or videos used the Kentucky accent, generally favoring something sounding French or British.
The Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had created.
Is this because anything said in a foreign accent seems to carry more intellectual weight than a Kentucky accent?
What is it called when you throw toilet paper at a house? TPing. Why would you throw toilet paper onto a house?
We don't do that in France.
Vandalism.
TP something?
TPing. Yeah.
To reiterate, everyone I met there was extremely lovely and probably very bright. Thanks, Kentucky.
So they found these dolphins. They're about a third the size of bottlenose dolphins that we have today. They're toothless, they're whiskered, and cute mini dolphins that basically were around 30 million years ago.
Now, wait a minute. With only a fossilized cranium, stop right there for a moment. Cranium. What's that?
Just the top part of the head.
Oh, the top part of the head. Okay, so with only the top part of the head.
While the article from phys.org does use the word cranium, and Ken is right that cranium normally refers to the rontal, parietal, occipital, temporal, sphenoid, and ethmoid bones. However, this is a general audience popular science article based on a research paper. The reporter chose that word. The research paper they report on is not so imprecise as to use a casual term like cranium. Here are the bones that were found. 2 skulls, not the one that Ken suggests. Quite a bit more than just the cap that protects the brain. Note that the find includes the maxilla and premaxilla bones, which from the side view are typically found here. These are the bones that would contain or interface with the teeth, if the animal had any. There was no need to guess or extrapolate from unrelated bones, as Ken will suggest. The maxilla and premaxilla bones for intermoristrum xenops did not have or support teeth. Direct observation.
As people get older, they sometimes lose their teeth.
You should know.
They're not evolving.
But when humans lose their teeth, the holes in the jaw where the teeth once were remain. There's evidence they once had teeth. This is just painful to watch.
They can talk about a toothless dolphin from a piece of cranium.
Yeah.
They found the majority of 2 skulls.
It blows me away when I see stuff like this.
That's why people need to read carefully.
I agree. People need to read carefully, and maybe even click on the links to the primary source instead of relying on someone else's interpretation, say an internet creation news show. Looking forward to that day when you follow your own advice.
My dog loves me. No, he's looking for food. Okay.
No, dogs now. You need to be
He's
a
going to
little
rile
careful
everybody.
on that. Dogs and
There's
cats
people in the
can
audience
exhibit
getting
some
upset.
emotion.
Stop talking about the audience. Though it was true, this was the brief moment when Ken started to lose them, with the otherwise reserved crowd beginning to shift seat positions in protest. Through most of the presentation, the audience did a lot of head nodding in agreement and muttering things like yes and amen, as you might expect.
For those that are here in the live audience, we'll let them meet us afterwards. For the rest of you, you can't meet us afterwards because you're not here.
Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. They don't do this every episode of Answers News, but they're doing it on Paulogia Day.
We need to finish. You've been talking too much.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, all right. We're going to sign off for today, and we'll see you back on Thursday.
God bless you.
Thank you, everyone. Our Answers from Genesis trio here will be out in the lobby. You can ask them questions and talk to them. And right now, you can gather all your possessions and exit to your left. Thank you.
Yeah, 3 of us will be out here if you want to come say hi, or sometimes people want to get a photograph.
And with that, Answers News was over, but my mission to meet the trio lie ahead. Or rather to the left, in the smaller of 2 Creation Museum gift shops. Most of the audience got into the meet and greet line, each getting a snapshot and maybe 1 or 2 words in with the AiG panel. I held back to close to the end of the line so as not to ruin the fun for the rest of the guests in case things went badly. It was in that line that Julie, my reluctant partner in crime, let me know that the uniformed security team had taken extra note of me during the show, and had been moving in closer as I did to Ken. Okay, so maybe not the time to confront him, but maybe I could ask the one question that I had no idea how they would answer.
Canada, right? Canada.
Now this is true. Ken Ham's answer book altered the course of my life. Until I read his books, I was a young earth creationist and biblical inerrantist who was seeking scientific affirmation for my beliefs. But Ken's books were so disingenuous and void of actual answers that it shook me to my core and caused me to seek answers in secular science.
Do you ever look at the internet commentary on this kind of stuff?
Well, I know they have people mocking doing specific things.
Oh, okay.
There are, I've seen those, so yeah.
So like using like the Hammonds?
Yeah. They don't have a light.
Okay. They're probably sitting in different places or something. Waiting for the next check.
Yes! Ken Ham laughed and said, yeah, I've seen that one. George Purdom and Ken Ham have seen Ham and Egg News. Are you kidding me? So Georgia thinks I need to get a life, and Ken Ham says I'm in my parents' basement waiting for my next check. By the way, if anyone is sending checks to my parents' house, I'm not getting them. Like we've said 1,000 times before, I honestly can't tell if Georgia has put the pieces together and knows exactly what she's talking about. She may well realize that she's insulting me to my face. I can't tell. Ken gave me a thumbs up, and Bodie told me God bless as I stepped away. So they don't know. But Georgia, She might have known. Cold-blooded. If you put it together, good on ya. With the footage I wanted and the confirmation I'd sought, Julie and I beelined to our pre-planned escape route and exited the museum quickly before the security guards decided to make other plans for us. Now, why should I care if Ken and Georgia and Bodie watch this show? I mean, I'm never going to change their mind. This is their livelihood, so even if they agreed with me, they couldn't admit it. But maybe, just maybe, it'll drive them to be better, to have better arguments. And maybe, just maybe, I secretly want Ken to win me back. But to do that, he's going to need something better. Besides, all of us behave better when we know we're being watched, like the security guards watching me, that crater in the sky watching the audience, or Paulogia watching Ken Ham. Keep tuning in, Ken, and thanks for the hospitality. I'd like to extend a special thanks to my first Patreon patrons, which officially kicks off this month. If you'd like to help support this channel, and maybe even become a cartoon, check out patreon.com/Paulogia. But much more importantly, I can't wait to hear your thoughts and comments about my Creation Museum Answers News adventures. If you enjoyed the video, why not tap on the subscribe button so that you're notified when new science or ham and egg episodes are published. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, later.